Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Trolls Band Together. I guess I sort of have a weird history with this franchise, but I think the thing with the Trolls movies is they're all very light and fluffy by design, have a lot of music in them, and can kind of be a gateway to all the music, pop music of the past, to the kiddos, basically. That is like one of their big things. And I think what works when these films do work is when they're about that, when they're about showing the past music to the new generation. And in the last one, Trolls World Tour, I believe, they had Ozzy Osbourne, they had George Clinton. They were trying to show, rock and like the ideas of music and genre and all those things. And when it's really about music, these things actually kind of work out. What I didn't like about the first film, didn't really like the first one. And what I don't necessarily like about this is they always try to, if they try to tackle any issue that isn't like music, it really doesn't work very well. And I wish they'd stick to that, because that would be really cool and be different. But they often in these films really overdo it to the point where you're like, it comes off as completely insincere, which I know is like the point of the movie. But they push it so hard that it's like SpongeBob is insincere, Bugs Bunny is insincere, every major cartoon character is, but those beats land because they give them a beat. And so oftentimes when someone's doing something serious, like the sparkly troll voiced by Keenan, I think it's voiced by Keenan Thompson, or whomever, cuts it off with a joke, and so nothing lands at all. And it's just like this, like we are so determined to be fluffy, we do not care about anything else, and it just comes off as just like permanently encased in sugar in a way that you can't really see it divided from that. This movie is about Trolls Band Together is about the Branch, played by Justin Timberlake, apparently was in a boy band called Brozone, and he has to get them all back together. We find out he has a long lost brother who I believe is voiced by Eric Andre, and him and Poppy go on a journey, and they reunite with Brozone to kind of stop these other music people who are stealing the Brozone sound or something. I will say, before I go into this, I actually saw this at a kid birthday party at a good time. I think if anything has shown my growth as a person, I think, through these three troll films, whereas the first one, I'm like definitely fascist, and the third one, I'm like, hey, good time with the kids, seeing this at the birthday party. So it's probably a evolution of life with the trolls. Not something I thought would happen when I saw the first one, but here we are. So, if anyone who went with me seeing this and was like, wow, you're kind of a grump, I did have a good time. It just, went to a Trolls experience after. It was a whole thing, and it was cool. However, I'm surprised they kept making these, because my kid isn't into them, despite she likes music and stuff, and I hear some kids are into it. I know that like the second one was supposed to come out to theaters, Trolls World Tour, came out on demand, made a ton of money because the studios make a lot more percentage-wise on demand than they do theatrically. So the second one, despite not coming to theaters at all, was like an extremely profitable movie. So there was no way they weren't going to make another one, despite the fact that this one did not go straight to VOD, obviously. So I think like part of the story of this franchise is that it had an insanely profitable second one that was just because of COVID, which is why I think this happened. I do think this film is interesting because I've heard other people and parents and people talk about the second one and how like the George Clinton stuff had all this music and how they like it so much because of that. And I was thinking about the second one, how much more that is about music, and I thought that was a little more healthier and in a better mode for a kid's movie. Whereas this one, it's about boy bands, which is like fine. I have nothing honestly against that. But it's also about friendship and like brothers and stuff. It's a little hard to go from a movie that's sort of like about like a lot of major issues with music to just being like, boy bands are cool. I mean, I feel like there's like issues with boy bands we could have gone into. Not like, I don't want someone to be Lou Pearlman or something like that, but I think there's like musical things, and like, I don't know, I would have liked more New Edition, frankly. I like New Edition. Of the boy, I think they should get more respect, to be perfectly honest with you. I hear too much about the white groups, and like they're all, like New Edition. Without New Edition, there'd be no New Kids. Without no New Kids, there'd be no Backstreet and NSYNC. So like in my mind, they're kind of the first one. I know people say the Temptations, but in the modern context, it's kind of those guys. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but you didn't come here to watch me debate the history of boy bands. But I wish they'd gone more into that. And the other thing is, like, this has like it's however many years since there's been a new NSYNC song, and they do play it a few times, but like they don't really. It just feels like a thing they just sort of did, and like something that's not very special. I think the only one besides obviously Justin Timberlake's all throughout this movie, I think Lance Bass says a line and that's it. And I was like, oh, this feels way less special than I thought. And I don't think like it should have dwelled on it maybe a little bit longer. It just feels like they sort of went over it really quickly. Like I was saying with it is I noticed they would undercut almost every serious moment. And there's certain times where like they would undercut it, but it would like be a character thing. But I'd already rolled my eyes, so it like kind of like I felt like didn't roll my eyes, but like I would sort of be like, what? Like, and it like took me a minute to like come back to it. It's just really weird way of writing this movie. I found that to be very strange. They did do this like 2D thing when they hit the hyper button they hit this button in the bus and it gets all like 2D and stuff. I thought that was cool. I keep reading in the Wikipedia and other places like that was inspired by Yellow Submarine. I thought it was just like 70s cartoons. I didn't understand, like, I don't like when people who make stuff and they have a past reference and they just like, I don't know, it's like a thing or whatever. And you can sort of tell the director was not behind that part. Because they're like mentioning a different reference and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It was like animation director, the guy whose name I don't see on the Wikipedia. I get it, but like, you could have tried harder. But I did like that. I like the traditional animation is in this. I think DreamWorks does work in this goofier style, and like earlier this year with Ruby Gillman, which I think is actually a pretty good movie. It's sort of one of the more underrated animated films of the year. These seem to do well, I think, because of the legacy of the Trolls and the franchise and stuff. I'm still mystified by like, wasn't it just like a doll with a gem in its belly button and they were naked? And like, what are these other things? Like, that has always been confusing to me. Like, what is this? And anytime I like ask somebody, they're like, I don't know, they just changed. And I'm like, okay, so we're all just accepting that like the thing that made this IP like recognizable, we just erased, and now it's this other thing. Just feels, that always felt weird. I don't think these are like amazing animated films. I think they are just like a fun, good time at the movies. You take people, you have a good time, people watch them together as a family. I think you can, talk over them and stuff like that. They're sort of made for that. I think it's just like a franchise that DreamWorks kept going because it's extremely profitable. I don't think it's their best work whatsoever. I don't particularly like how they're written, or the jokes are written very well. And I think the music, oftentimes, they're just like going through songs so much, you can't really concentrate on them. I often find when I watch clips of the last couple, I forget certain songs because they played like 4 in a row real quick. And like, I don't fully understand what they're doing with that. I also am like, we could like mess around with the songs and like put a more interesting one. We don't have to always do these like huge hits all the time, but I get it. Like, that's probably your jukebox musical things for people who are not like know even what Ruby Gillman is, or like are super into animation. Like, these are animated films. I don't know anyone who's into animation who really gets obsessed with these movies. So I think it is like for the normies, and like you watch it and you have a good time, and that's totally fine. I'm not trying to be an asshole about that. I'm just saying like there needs to be other kinds of animation and stories and stuff. I just don't think it's like an amazing example of these things. It's probably the franchise you don't think of when you think of DreamWorks, because it's not even in their little opening thing. Like, Bad Guys got in there, but I was like, oh, what's interesting? Like, not Trolls. Okay, so maybe they also are a little embarrassed with the whole thing. But I think I've like kind of softened on this and like more chill about these than I was obviously with the first one, where I was not super chill about that. And I think I've just like come to terms with like, they're just like sugary kind of sweet movies for people who, just want to have a fun time with these things and don't want to think too much deeper about them. And that's sort of fine. I don't think they deserve that much more attention, really, unfortunately. I think it's just sort of like DreamWorks thing that they sort of worked into and it works out for them. And, you know, I don't know if necessarily there will be another one. They seem to be doing pretty good. I kind of hope if they ever do, they focus on more of an interesting idea about music that would help the kids like talk about music and stuff like that. And it wasn't just, you know, like random animation movie with a ton of songs and stuff. Maybe I'm asking too much of them, and maybe I should just be okay with its sugariness. And I've always been putting too much on these films, and they were never meant for higher analysis, which, to be honest, doesn't sound like they're the deepest movies. But maybe that was the whole point. And I missed it, and I'm just a curmudgeon sitting here complaining about Trolls all these years later. But I guess we've all band together about something, because I can still have a okay time with these and kind of watch them, and it's over, and then, you know, I'm just like, you know, it's another Trolls. So if you've seen Trolls Band Together and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.